All right, we're recording and we're talking about being dynamic as a rhythm player. And this could end up being a certain part of a certain series. I don't know, I just feel like talking about it right now, so I'm going to record it while it's fresh. So I wanted to explore the concept, maybe of different levels of dynamic detail throughout a song. So if we took a song like Blue Ridge Cabin Home, and we can break down the dynamic arcs of the whole song, but just like we're just talking about the guitar rhythm right now, which is not, in a vacuum from everything else, but we're going to pretend that it is for right now. So you have, 3 verses, breaks, 3 choruses, and so you can start there, kind of at the macro level, like, okay, so for example, the average verse might have a dynamic neutral or average, as in like if you were to think about it mathematically, like if you kind of if you averaged out the dynamic range of like the guitar part in a verse, it might be here, and then in that particular song, like a song like that, traditional bluegrass thing, the chorus will be lower on average, at least instrumentally. Another thing to think about is like, okay, so now that's kind of like the verse and chorus relationship. How does the first verse relate to the third verse? Like, what if there was a bit of an increase there? Okay, and what does that do to the whole song? So now the song has, instead of this arc of being, there's now this like, I did a bad job, where there's growth throughout the entire song, but also between the relationships of the parts. Okay? So that's something to think about. I'm realizing this video is gonna, you're gonna sit down and think with this and bear with my ramblings a little bit. But I'm sure you're up for that. You're at least this far. Okay, so let's talk about solo, like the breaks. And this will all end up leading to a larger idea, I think. So you have fiddle, mandolin, banjo solos, okay? So we might be able to think of maybe the banjo solo has the most potential for the highest dynamic neutral. I'm going to be using that term, I think, dynamic neutral. The fiddle also could have a pretty high dynamic neutral, but I think the fiddle solo is the place where there's more opportunity for change, for actual, dynamic change. Is that a oxymoron? No, oxymoron. What's the word? Anyways, so the fiddle being so free as it is, and kind of it can be off pretty untethered rhythmically, and that's cool. And so I think there's a lot of chance for there to be explosion in the rhythm section. And a great way to hear an example of that is on a record with no banjo, like the Manzanita album. The fiddle solo becomes not only the highest, dynamic neutral, but it also is a place where there's just explosion, there's constant dynamic conversation over the fiddle solo, and the fiddle is perfect for that. The banjo, in my view, is a place where, again, you can be pretty dynamic, but it's you kind of have to, just with the nature of the subdivisions of the banjo, you kind of have to lock in with the banjo, and I think the song benefits just from the nature of the banjo is kind of starting and ending things. So number one, you're looking for things to what's the word? Less improvised, more melodic, more you're getting back to what the song is at its essence with the banjo solos, in my opinion, because especially in that context, the banjo's kicking it off and then taking the last solo, and so it's kind of entering us into the arena of the song, and then kind of reminding us of it as we exit. So that's something. This is fun, just standing here talking about things. It's cool. Okay, so but the banjo, it's like, in my mind, that's a place where, you know, rhythmically and dynamically, you know, you can push it hard, but kind of stay there, and it's cool. And maybe I'm kind of making this up, exaggerating it for, you know, to have a point. But I do think there's some sort of value in there. And so, okay, so now we're moving on to like more of an actual point, because like that's just kind of like, you know, mechanics of a song, but we're getting into the guitar stuff. So now that we've kind of gotten, you know, that level of detail, let's go into like a verse. Like, okay, so, like, where I wandered when I was mad. And that thing, oh my God, I love that shit. Everybody should just practice that all day, every day. All they should do is it's so great. And when I hear bluegrass that does not have some favorite version of that kind of dynamic motif, or whatever you want to call it, where when there's no space vocally, there is kind of a bubble of dynamics in the rhythm section, especially the guitar. And so we'll get into that later, like what the guitar's role, like how the guitar is like the perfect person to kind of like orchestrate dynamic change in the rhythm section. But we're talking about the verse. Okay, so there's like that element of it at that level of detail. So it's like when there's no vocals, there is space for there to be something happening instrumentally. Okay, so. Back down again. Okay, right now in the chorus. So there's something there on that C. And you'll notice, like on the album version, I think it's like there's a less of a bump there. And then, okay, think about why that's cool. Like, why not just slamming it, you know, again, is cool. And I think it's a subtle thing because, again, the dynamic neutral of the chorus is lower than the verse. And so what you can get away with increasing in dynamics is smaller to have it still be tasteful and make sense and follow an accurate arc or continuous arc. Okay, so that's something to think about. And then, like, the really cool shit. Like, how is your dynamic, like your right hand changing from chord to chord, leading into chords? How are you dynamic within a bar? Okay? And so, like, you can start with just, like, which itself has had some dynamic stuff built into it, because you have this like you have this weird combination where like that's just one note but it's lower, and so there's like a I don't know, it has like more weight, more gets more points, you know, than a note that would be here. But then you have this strum that has, you know, multiple notes, and so it's like somehow it sounds very even. Especially, you know, you play at the same volume, okay? So like that's your starting point, okay? But then like how can you ebb and flow at the smallest level? So like very subtle, but like you should be breathing with the music at all times. And so like that's getting to my main point. And like again, I don't know if I demonstrated it like as well as I possibly could have there. Maybe let's take a step back. So like maybe you can think about the Tony Rice thing of like, I'm getting off the tracks here. Okay, let's get back on the rails. So, again, I'm just trying to reiterate the point of like how dynamic can you be, and then should you? So like, it doesn't mean like you should be trying to play as free as possible at all times. It depends on who you're playing with, the type of music you're playing, how progressive or how useful dynamics is to expressing what you're trying to express. So if you listen to like the Bluegrass album band. Everybody has their own kind of dynamic, cyclical kind of thing at this small level. But it's pretty subtle, like it's pretty high and tight music, and there's like those larger dynamic changes as a group. And then again, Tony is, so good at just creating like dynamic intrigue all the time. And so like, I mean, there's no one better to listen to than him. But like, I guess my general point is that like, think about this stuff, be aware of like how far you can take it, and then take it there, and then okay, now that you know how far you can take it, use that power responsibly. Because there's nothing worse than like music that doesn't have all those things I just talked about is dead. Essentially, it's not living, it's not breathing, it's not alive. Like, and what you're trying to do as a musician, and especially as a bluegrass rhythm player, as a guitar player, because this is like, again, I'll get to that point in a second, but like you're trying to represent life, you're trying to mimic what goes on in the world that we cannot escape, that we are in. And the fact is that nothing exists in a vacuum, and everything is dependent on each other, and there's all this reactivity constantly going on. And so you have to both be reactive to your own mind and your own desires, and be in tune with your own desires of like, what do I want to hear? How do I want this music to breathe? First you gotta want it to breathe, and you have to figure out like, how do I actually want it to move? How would the movement of this music, help the expression of it? But then you're also reacting to everybody else's own internal reactivity, and the more that you can talk about this with people that you play with, and the more that everybody kind of dives into it and takes responsibility on their own to be a part of this such beautiful, wonderful dynamic interplay that's just like, there's so much of it, man. Like, there is such an intense, at like the highest levels of music, it's number one, it's a lot of effort. Like, it's a lot of, effort's not the right word. It's a lot of stuff. Like, and to maybe someone like, thinking about like when I was a kid and like when I didn't really understand a lot of this, like the amount of presence that I require of me like now to play music in the way that I want to hear it is so much higher than it was back then. And I'm hoping it will continue to increase as I continue to grow as a musician. But that's the thing, like the more in tune, like there is an infinite level of attunement you can have to the sounds and feelings and stuff that are coming out of the music you play. Okay, so that's the like my foo-foo philosophical part of that. Another dynamic-esque, I don't know, this word dynamics is like maybe I should look up maybe what I should be saying for some of these, but like, so we just talked about kind of volume. I want to talk about space now. So, the guitar has a lot of cool, like a big range of space. So like maybe from like, I think like a lot of open chords, or a lot of open strings. Okay, so there's like the number of open strings you have is like a pretty big determining factor, because it allows you to, number one, like they just ring differently, and then you can hit them in a different way. Like they respond better to being struck and ringing out, obviously. So like that's great. And then on the flip side, you kind of like a not a full C chord, you know, kind of like leaving out this open E, like, you know, or like, you know, so you can kind of, or, you know, at the bottom end of the space, like, you know, kind of like, you know, think of, you know, like what you're doing when you're coming yourself, like in a duo session, you know, or like, you know, just, where you're almost just playing bass, like the primary role is the guitar is like play bass, you know. So like that is a thought. I wonder how I'm gonna edit this together so that it like doesn't look like I'm just, well, maybe I shouldn't edit it and like people will actually watch this. Okay, what do we get back? But okay, so you can also create, by adding notes to chords, you can create kind of like the illusion of more space or a larger, I guess the more notes you add, so long as they work together with the other notes, the more volume you will have. So like, let's take also we're gonna do a PSA right now. Use this chord. Play that chord, please. It's fine, it's great, and it's so useful. Like that's fine and dandy, and I, you know, mostly use that G chord, and there's, you know, there's obviously, I guess you guys all know where it should be used, but like there's so much. You know, this one I don't love. I don't love the low third. But that's so great. Use it, okay? And you can use it in like much more hard driving context than you might realize. Like Lonesome Pine, Blue Highway, Lonesome Pine. He's using this one. I think Tim talked. Maybe I saw that on an interview or something. And I went back and listened. I was like, oh, sure enough, that bad boy. What was I talking about? Okay, adding notes to chords. So like, let's take the G chord, the power G. Okay. Now, what if I add a 9? Even though there's not really like, it's weird. There's not a huge difference sonically, but there's more space filled. Yeah, of course, because there's another note. Yeah, we'll edit that out. That profound thought. And now take away this third finger, and oh my gosh, look at what you have. You just upgraded this beautiful chord. You have that, the 2 and the 3, or the 9 and the 3, whatever you want to call it, you know. Okay, so what I'm getting at is like, where in this world of bluegrass and adjacent genres and things, permutations of bluegrass, where could you use something? Why would you use that? What would it do? And on the flip side, why would you use this chord? Why would you use this chord? And that's not something I can answer. You got to figure that out yourself, you know? You know, so like part of what I did want to share is like some cool adaptations of, so like A minor. Okay, so you got that bad boy. What if you add our old friend the 9? Okay, and now it's just this huge spacey thing that like, there's a few contexts where it does not work, but a lot of times it like can really just like, it's haunting. It's haunting and it's complicated, and it reacts well to being like struck. You know, so you can like, you know, it's a sensitive sounding chord that can be used aggressively. Like another, let's see, this is another thing I use for A minor a lot. Where you've got like, yeah, so I guess that's a sus. And then, okay, you add that. And then you just have like this wall of sound And then you need to decide when it's time for a wall of sound, because goddamn, I hate it. I hate it. Everybody stop playing so damn hard. Stop playing so hard all the time. It is driving me crazy. You do not need to, and this is going to get into another video, but I think I'm just going to keep recording because we are on a roll. You as a guitar player, drive did not come from you beating the absolute crap out of like the downbeats and wherever you want to, stop doing that. Especially don't do it the whole time. But I don't think anybody wants to hear you like distort your guitar. Very rarely is that like cool. So I think the goal is to be dynamic all the way to the point where maybe the way to think about it is like, like if you're being dynamic to the point where it's like you're just doing it for the sake of like dynamics, then maybe that's like, and I guess I'm just kind of talking to myself right now because like I probably do that a lot. And so yeah, so like, only do it to the point where it actually like outside of your part, impacts the song in a way that where you don't have to be like, oh, the guitar player did that to do, I don't know. Editing that out. Where are we at? We're at cool chords and not playing so hard. Let's talk about another couple. So like a C chord. Great, we love a C chord. Get that major 7 in there. That's cool. And then, oh my gosh, what if we do? Basically playing a G major 7 with a C. But if you use it over a C major chord in a lot of bluegrass contexts, it is cool. Also, that's cool. That's not really useful though. I just thought about that. Okay, we'll do this one. These two, I use these a lot, like even in like, surprised how good of a mash chord. Those can be. So that's cool. Yeah, I think we're getting a little off the rails here. What are we doing? We're being ourselves right now. This is just how, if you want any information from me, you're gonna have to get it in this way because I don't know how to not do it like this. So we're talking about space, like cool ways to use space. Like I think, what we're gonna talk about is like how the guitar player is the person not the person, but like has, in my idea of bluegrass, has so much power to affect dynamic change. Because, so think about this. Okay, so like if you think of, okay, so there's the band is a team as itself, and you think of the rhythm section, there's 4 people, there's the bass and the mandolin. They are kind of a duo. They are setting the framework for the guitar and the banjo to weave through. Okay? And so back to my point about like hammering down beats, like your job is not exactly to set the framework. Your job is to have a good time, but your job is not to fucking, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Your job is not to, be the bass and mandolin. Exactly. Your role is different. What was I saying? Yeah, so the banjo and the guitar are hitting a lot more subdivisions usually. Okay? And they have a smaller dynamic picture because, or like back to what I was saying about like there being kind of macro and micro levels of dynamics. Like the the guitar and banjo, just by the nature of their subdivisions, have more opportunity to affect dynamics in a smaller space. Does that make sense? So like again, like in a bar, a guitar player can be very dynamic. A mandolin player can too, of course, but they kind of venture into guitar territory when they do. Which is also cool. So like maybe I don't want to like make everybody's roles super binary or like they're, but I'm just as a starting point, I think that's a good way to think about it. And then so think about the banjo. The banjo is kind of limited by like kind of needing to keep this roll going. Okay, and so they can accentuate volume in each finger, and like they can certainly rise volume wise, but like in a traditional bluegrass context, they are not really responsible, or it probably wouldn't really be that cool for the most part. I mean, obviously there are when the banjo chops, or when the banjo kind of switches to some backup stuff, but like when a banjo is just kind of rolling through, they are not stopping. They're gonna keep going. The guitar player has so much opportunity to play as little or as much as they can subdivision wise. Okay, so like I mean you're kind of, the bass mandolin roll is like kind of your starting point, and then you can, I mean you could go more than that, but I don't think anybody really wants to hear you do that unless it's like cool. So you have like an infinite number of combinations of subdivision you can put into each bar, and that gives you all the power in the world to spur the band forward in its dynamic journey. And like again, Tony Rice, like I don't think anybody has been as spontaneous. Like number one, Tony's timing is like unmatched, but his spontaneity and his dynamic understanding and his ability to like make the band do what it should do are so listen to Tony not to learn like the details of what he, like the nuts and bolts of like the Tony's technique, but the larger things that he did, like the way that he could affect a band and bring like he brought so much life, and it's like a representation of like how much life was inside his head, and so like that's a cool way to think about it. And like so Tony is like, I don't know, like listening to other rhythm players is great for me, but I never get like my goal in life is to like play rhythm like half as effectively as Tony Rice. And like not in his style at all, but just like in my style, and do what he did, do what he could do to a band, to whatever I'm playing in. And so yeah, so my point is like you as a guitar player, you have a very big responsibility in being the director in some ways of like, or being a maybe not think of it as the director, but you are a prime person to make it happen. So make it happen. And I have, in these 30 minutes I've been rambling, hopefully I've given you some sort of, route to think about these things. I would love to like get some more tangible, I think I'm going to film some more tangible things in the future. But this has been really fun, and I have a lot more thoughts too, I think. But yeah, let me try if I can summarize. So like, okay, don't play so hard all the time, and like don't play so hard ever usually. Like, I mean, it's cool like very occasionally, but you do not need to play that hard, and it just makes it harder for everybody else to be heard, to hear themselves, to feel like they're a part of the music, to feel like the music is like working together. Like especially like young kids, like I admire your enthusiasm and like your desire to mash it down and to drive, but the guitar player's job is to dance, not to pound. You are not a pounder. Like, there's most, I don't know, you're not a pounder. You're a dancer. You are weaving in. You are being deft. You're being like light and airy. Okay, you are not taking because the heavier that you play most often means that the music will get heavy and like sag and drag and just like feel not cool. Okay, so don't play so hard, don't play so aggressive, exercise some restraint, and then use all that restraint you have to be dynamic in an intentional way that makes the people around you better. Give them a cushion for their own dynamic ability. You know, you have as much ability to affect a soloist's trajectory as they have to affect the rhythm section's trajectory. And so there's this like beautiful conversation happening all the time that, you know, can lead to, you know, you need to do it a lot. Like you need to practice thinking about it and doing it with people that you play with, because it's a hard dance to get right. But the more you listen to music that has that, you know, the more like, the Mighty Popular record is like a good example of like a group that does. It's not quite as like exaggerated as like Manzanita is like the most dynamic. I mean, there's no banjo on there, but banjo kind of does kind of limit dynamic range in a way because it's always going most of the time. But yeah, Manzanita is phenomenal. That Mighty Popular record's great. There's a lot of like the early Punch Brothers stuff that's kind of grassy is like really cool. For that, and I'm sure like I want to like actually like give you good, because like there's examples that I listen to, but like there's all sorts of examples of this like in more traditional contexts and the like. So yeah, that was this is a bad summary because I'm just rambling more. What else was I talking about? Space, like, you know, how much space and how little space can you add to chords, and when would you do that and why? You know, and then experiment. Open strings are your friend. Extended voicings are your friend, and that's not, well, yeah, they're you know, these two strings can be added to so many things. Okay? And so, yeah, and then the challenge with that is like, you don't want to like saturate your playing, which is, I'm talking to myself, you don't want to saturate your playing with too much stuff. But man, I love stuff. Stuff is awesome. And so that's cool. Oh, I'm gonna have a separate video about like metronome, rhythm playing to metronomes and rhythm playing to like albums, because that is critical. That is very important. See, what else did I get in? I feel like I said so many other things, but you probably will hear them in the video. So, yeah, that's all I've got to say. Right, well, that's not true. I have so much to say, but that's all I'm going to say right now. And I hope you guys got something from this, and that I don't come off as a fool or someone who has no knowledge, because I hope that I have some knowledge that is useful to you. That is all I have to say, so thank you. If you watched it this far, I truly love you. If you didn't, you won't know that I love you, but I still do, probably. Bye-bye.